Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Middle Grade Latest and Greatest. I am Ronny Khuri, Senior Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. And before we begin, I will go over some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email that you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble accessing these materials, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. If you're in the audience, you are in listen-only mode, but we do welcome any questions you may have. So on the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a button for Q&A. So if you have a question, if you need technical assistance, just click Q&A and type your message into the box that pops up. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we can pass along all other questions to today's panelists, and that way they can follow up with you after the webinar. And last but not least, Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. So to enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned before. From there, you can select show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting subtitle settings. Okay, today we have the pleasure of hearing from Elise Levine, Director of Sales and Marketing at Shadow Mountain Publishing, Morgana Santoli, Sales and Marketing Coordinator at Yen Press, Aaron Alladin, Associate Editor at Pajama Press, and June Lee, Assistant Editor at Annick Press. And first up, we will hear from Elise Levine. Elise is a veteran book publishing professional who has worked on a wide variety of books, from trendy titles now long forgotten to the emergence of new genres and more diverse voices to the ardent Shakespeare. She left New York City to move west to join Shadow Mountain Publishing as Director of Sales and Marketing. Take it away, Elise.
Shadow Mountain Publishing is probably best known for our middle grade fantasy series, Fablehaven and Dragonwatch, and our empathy building titles. Our children's books are all clean content, which for us means no violence, no drugs, and no foul language. But our characters don't live in some utopian world of goodness. They have problems as they try and navigate growing up. They cope with loss, endure economic hardship. Sometimes they do dumb things and face the consequences of their mistakes. And they face hard challenges in both the real world and the fantastical worlds of our writers' imaginations. Brandon Mull is the best-selling author of the Fablehaven and Dragonwatch series. In March, we'll publish Carnival Quest, the long-awaited series finale to the Candy Shop War, where magical candies give kids superpowers to fight a family of evil magicians. So liquid licorice, for example, lets the eater change their body anywhere on the spectrum between solid and liquid, so you can stretch and fit through any opening that water could get through. There's a lot of whimsy in this series, as you'd expect from Brandon Mull, and since it takes place in a carnival, there's also a lot of scary elements, with a particular emphasis on creepy clowns. Coming in August is the first ever official Fablehaven cookbook, wondrous recipes inspired by the characters from the series. Each recipe includes a brief description on how it relates to the Fablehaven story. All the essential ingredients to make every recipe in this cookbook is located in the front of the book in a section called Caretaker's Pantry, and it will feature an original short story by Brandon Mull. Coming in March from J. Scott Savage is the debut of the series Grayson Fox, School Treasure Hunter. He's a fedora-wearing fifth-grade adventurer in the spirit of Indiana Jones, who navigates a maze of old textbooks, battles menacing school rats, and climbs a mountain of discarded desks in order to find a long-lost chest of toys which were confiscated in school over a period of many decades. And as such, there are many retro references like Pokemon, rare comic books, Rubik's Cubes, and old-school gadgets that amused bored students in yesteryear. This author is also the writer of Mysteries of Cove, a steampunk series where real dragons battle it out against ingenious mechanical dragons, fashioned using only the steam-powered, ironclad, gear-moving technology of the 19th century. Also by this author and new this month is the Lost Wonderland Diaries Book 2, Secrets of the Looking Glass. The series is inspired by Alice in Wonderland books, the one book the author says he loves the most, is intrigued by, and the story stays with him. He's not trying to capture Lewis Carroll, but to have the same magical, whimsical wordplay. It's an example of how great art can inspire entirely new creations. The premise is two kids find the lost diaries of Lewis Carroll in their local library, and that opens a portal back to Wonderland, where all the familiar characters like Humpty Dumpty and Tweedledee and Tweedledum are now monstrous. The protagonists, Celia and Tyrus, represent two elements of Carroll's work, namely that logic and imagination must work together to solve problems. The Questmaster's Trap is book 2 in the Champions Quest series and is just out this fall. It's about a bunch of kids who see a weird curiosity shop in town, and the window display proves far too tempting. So they go in to explore, and that transports them straight into a role-playing game, something like Dungeons and Dragons, where they have to overcome their real-world vulnerabilities to outwit and outplay their game foes. The main characters represent a wide range of life experiences, like living in foster care. This author, Frank L. Cole, says he wanted to have a character in the series who struggles with panic attacks, as he does, and to show how the character is fighting through that by finding ways through teamwork, through making friends, and through embracing a leadership role. He hopes kids have one main takeaway from his books, which is that life can be hard, but it can also be great. McCall Hoyle is the author of Stella, which is currently nominated for 8 state awards, and she has a new title coming out in April about a dog friend of Stella's in the book Just Gus. Gus was rescued after being abused as a puppy and trained as a livestock working dog, protecting his sheep and chickens from predators like fox and coyotes. One day, Gus confronts a bear, and in fearlessly protecting his flock, injures his leg, making it impossible to continue his important work. He's placed with a family and meets Diego, who struggles with social anxiety, which limits his ability to speak, and he has to attend school online. Gus realizes Diego needs a friend as much as his sheep needed a protector. But in order to stay with his new family and succeed in his new job, Gus has to learn to control his instincts, like barking and patrolling the neighborhood. This is a young reader's adaptation of The Paper Daughters of Chinatown. It's based on the true story of Chinese girls and young women who were tricked into coming to America in the late 19th century, who landed in San Francisco using forged papers and were compelled to face lives of brutal servitude by unscrupulous gangs. This adaptation follows the story of Tae Choi, who at age 6 is being sent on a boat, she believes, to visit her grandmother, but her impoverished father has sold her. Alone and afraid, she realizes she is headed to San Francisco and is forced to go by a new name listed on her paper documents to start her hard new life as a servant in a gambling den. The story mostly takes place when Tae, now called Tien, is age 12, as she perseveres through her ordeal until she meets Dolly Cameron, with whom she forges a powerful friendship and the hope of a chance for freedom and eventually finding a new purpose in helping hundreds of immigrant women from China regain their lives and assert their long-denied legal and human rights. These are 2 recently published Young Readers editions by author Cameron Wright. Both are based on true stories and both have locations in Southeast Asia. The Orphan Keeper is the story of a boy in India who is kidnapped off the street and sold to an orphanage, eventually being adopted by an unsuspecting American family who don't know his family is still alive. He thrives in America, and due to a series of incredible coincidences, he gets additional clues to his past, which lead him back to India in search of his birth mother. This edition includes a Dear Young Reader letter from the man whose life the book is based, Taj Rowland. The Rent Collector is about a woman who scratches out basic subsistence by finding recyclables and things which could be repaired and sold from a garbage dump where she lives in Cambodia. In the book it says all her possessions could be held in her 2 hands. She is taught to read by the woman who is the rent collector and begins to realize the world is so much bigger than the dump, and as the women read together, they begin to understand each other, showing the power of literacy to empower and connect people. Virtually Me is a new middle grade title from the writing team behind the best-selling and state award-winning titles Mustaches for Maddie, Squint, and Willa and the Whale, Chad Morris and Shelley Brown. It takes place in a post-pandemic world where kids who would have social challenges in in-person school opt for a new virtual reality academy, thinking this is a dream come true. Avatars represent them in this 3D virtual reality environment, so they go to class, they mingle in hallways, and the book follows several students who each have a different reason to want to avoid in-person school, and we explore through their eyes whether they can, in fact, get a fresh start and avoid the conflicts that made in-person school such a struggle. Coming next spring by the same writing team, The Wild Journey of Juniper Berry is a middle-grade fish-out-of-water tale about a nature-loving girl raised off the grid in a cabin in the woods who relocates to the city when her brother needs medical care. To help pay the family's medical bills so they can move back home, Juniper starts posting videos filled with things she's learned from observing animals and nature. Kids at school start to share her videos to make fun of her, but the posts go viral as viewers appreciate her wisdom and begin to see the world from a fresh perspective. Here's a look at some recent empathy-building titles. Trusting True North takes place during a pandemic, as True reasons with all the adults so distracted by the virus, she must figure out how to resolve all her problems by herself as they unfold right along with the health crisis. The Legend of the Dream Giants is told in text and graphic novel-style illustrations and is the story of Berg, a lonely and misunderstood orphan giant whose mother comes to him in dreams to comfort and guide him. Real is based on the true story of one of the co-authors, Peyton Goddard. It's about a girl with non-speaking autism who wants to go to public school and must overcome the challenges and objections of students and their parents who don't understand autism and want her sent away to a special ed school. New this spring is a picture book about how a father's love for his daughter is joyfully expressed during their nightly routine when he braids her hair and shares imaginative and empowering bedtime stories in Only a Trentha Away. In one story, Gia's braid becomes a sturdy, twisted vine that she uses to bravely swing through a jungle. In another, her braids are jump ropes as she catches the beat to play double dutch with the best players in the neighborhood. This book was written by Nadine Fonseca, who is the founder of Mighty Kind, an educational multimedia company for families that aims to use teaching kindness as a bridge to anti-racist learning. It features an author's note sharing the history of braids in Latinx culture as a way to facilitate social connection and show cultural and artistic expression. Ming's Christmas Wishes is a story about the Chinese immigrant experience in Northern California in the 1930s, as Ming is torn between the American culture she's grown up in and loves, but where she faces open bigotry, and her mom's insistence on maintaining a traditional Chinese culture at home. She feels like she doesn't quite belong in either world until Pops takes her to see important symbols of her Chinese heritage from generations ago, and she comes to realize that all cultures have cherished symbols to celebrate. This is a great title to better understand the wounds of past injustices, to explain our current racial divisions. Let me quote the caption from the illustration on the bottom. This is Pops speaking to Ming. I was 14 when I came from China. I worked with my father in San Francisco. When there was trouble, he brought me to this mountain. Here, he said, we are not foreigners. Here we are men, a small part of nature's greatness. This is a new fall holiday title and a great pick for middle graders. It's a unique collection of the most beloved Christmas carols, from the warmly nostalgic to the majestically solemn and uplifting. It presents both the lyrics and the fascinating stories and interesting facts behind the creation of the songs. Each entry deepens our understanding of the music and enhances our appreciation of why these songs are culturally important and dearly treasured. Each chapter features a QR code to a link to watch or listen to a performance of the carol. Let me briefly mention two new upcoming young adult titles. Journal entry, Heading to School. I know what everyone will say. There goes the girl who tried to kill herself. This is the premise of Swimming in a Sea of Stars, a novel about teen mental health issues, particularly teens struggling with depression and suicidal ideation, with an emphasis on how healing and hope can come from small acts of kindness, and as such, every person can matter. Beauty Reborn is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, about healing from the trauma of emotional and sexual abuse through the lens of a well-known fairy tale. The story implies sexual abuse, but the incident is not explicitly described, and the story explores the difficulty of learning to trust again, as well as noting that the road to empowerment is an ongoing journey, not a simple happily ever after ending. The author, Elizabeth Loham, draws from her own experience as a sexual abuse survivor and identifies in the story the red flags associated with a manipulative and/or abusive relationship. Ebook review copies are available on Edelweiss and NetGalley, and on Edelweiss I keep EARCs available past pub date. Our titles are sold as ebooks on all popular platforms. Thank you, and feel free to reach out to me directly for any product information at ilevine@shadowmountain.com.
Thank you so much, Elise. Next up, we will hear from Morgana Santilli. Morgana is the sales and marketing coordinator at Yen Press. She's a former comic shop manager and buyer, and always particularly loved helping readers find their new favorite series. Other than reading manga, Morgana enjoys drinking lots of tea, snuggling with her 2 black cats, and collecting too many books for her toddler's personal library. Thank you so much for being here, Morgana.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. And thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Morgana. Once again, I'm the sales and marketing coordinator at Yen Press. Today, I want to talk with you all about JY, which is our middle grade graphic novel imprint. Next slide, please. So to talk a little bit about JY's history, some of you may be familiar with it already, but Yen Press, from the very beginning, we were always interested in publishing books for younger readers, books for children. We really believe in the importance of, kids' books and getting books into kids' hands. So we were publishing picture books like Kitty and Dino and Gabby and Gator, and also children's graphic novels. And in 2015, we published a book that probably many of you are familiar with, Awkward by Svetlana Shmakova. Svetlana had been kind of best known for her young adult graphic novels at the time, like Night School. But she, really just kind of dove right into middle grade. And with Awkward, we discovered that we really wanted to kind of focus on middle grade graphic novels and, get more of this material out into the hands of young readers. So in fall of 2017, we started the imprint JY. Next slide, please. Juyun Lee is the founder of JY. She's the editor-in-chief at Yen Press. And I just want to read a couple things that she has said about the imprint. I believe that middle school is when what you read defines and nourishes who you are and your perspective of the world. You are old enough to observe what's going on around you with insightful curiosity, and your mind is open and willing to take things in like a sponge. Additionally, I want JY to be a comfortable home for many authors where they feel like their voices can be cultivated and heard. So with JY, as with Yen Press, we are definitely reader focused, and we want to publish books that readers will connect with and are eager to read. But we're also very aware and conscious of making sure that creators feel that their work is being presented in the best possible way, and that they are, getting what they need out of this relationship with JY. So that's really important to us at Yen Press and at JY. Next slide, please. So once again, at this point, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Berrybrook Middle School series, but just in case you're not, they start with Awkward, and then Svetlana Shmakova published Brave and Crush. These are a series, but they do not need to be read in order. They stand alone very, very well. Next slide, please. There's a wonderful ensemble cast of characters in the Berrybrook Middle School series. We start off with Awkward, where we meet Peppy and her group of friends, which includes Jensen, who is then the main character of Brave. In Brave, we meet Jorge, who is then the main character in Crush. Next slide, please. And all of these characters live in a community that is very diverse, which I think, personally speaking, is very much what I experienced in middle school. You have a lot of kids from a lot of different backgrounds, and it's very important for middle grade readers to kind of see themselves reflected in their media. So diversity while, Svetlana has said that it wasn't intentional at the start. She kind of just drew what she knew and what she saw. She's definitely made sure that as the series goes on, she's very conscious about making sure that readers see themselves reflected in this series. Next slide, please. And of course, it's wonderful middle grade storytelling. These are really fun, engaging stories that talk about problems that young teens really do have, middle schoolers really do have. Things like kind of trying to make friends in a new school, dealing with bullies, dealing with crushes for the first time and romance, stuff that, again, middle schoolers are kind of confused by or in the middle of. And it's nice for them to be able to see characters like them kind of exploring these issues and coming to some conclusions. Next slide, please. Finally, the moment that many of you have been waiting for. There is another Barry Brook book coming out. In fact, it's coming out next week, next Tuesday. It is Enemies. And this one follows Felicity. She was introduced in the other books, of course, much like the other characters. She's kind of been in, the whole time. But Felicity's issue is that her younger sister is kind of a know-it-all, kind of a perfect academic child who teases Felicity about how she never finishes projects. She'll start things, but she just can't seem to get them done. So Felicity is having this internal struggle of trying to find something to prove Letty wrong, prove her sister wrong. And in the midst of this, she is also dealing with conflicts with friends. And a lot of the issues in the story deal with communication issues and trying to learn how to navigate relationships as you and your friends are all growing and changing and you all have different needs. Next slide, please. So once again, a lot of the story focuses on Felicity's internalized pressure. She hears from everyone outside the expectations, but she takes them internally and blows them up to a point where, she feels like she has to not only complete a project, but win. She's got to be the best. And in the course of this, without giving too much away, she gets into a group project and she kind of butts heads with a close friend. She's dealing with, a relationship from elementary school that's kind of gone weird and she can't figure that out. So she's balancing all these different kind of expectations of people, her family, her friends, her teachers. And I think this is something that's certainly very relatable, even to me as an adult, sometimes dealing with all those conflicting messages. Next slide, please. Once again, Felicity is really determined to do something awesome. And in the course of finding a new project, she kind of gets into this club, again, this entrepreneurial club, and teams up with one of her best friends. And they have to come up with an idea. And Felicity's so determined to have the best idea, to do the best project. So not only just start something and finish it, but be the winner. She wants to win and prove herself. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, could you go back 1 second? Sorry. I just want to say too, you're seeing clips here from the book, but we do have a full digital review copy of Enemies available on Edelweiss and on NetGalley. So please feel free to request that and I can approve it for you. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this series continuing. So if you haven't already gotten a copy, if you haven't already ordered it, please feel free to request it and I will approve that for you. Okay, now next slide. If your patrons or students or children are looking for more from Svetlana Shmakova, we have another series that she's started. It's the Weirn books. This series goes back into Svetlana's Night School series, but whereas Night School was intended for more of a YA audience, the Weirn books bring it into a middle school setting. So you have two main characters who go to this school. They are Weirns, which in this world is it's kind of like witches. They have these these astrals that follow them around. You can see them there on the cover. They're these like black and white ghost-like figures. Next slide, please. You can see them here. Again, pretty average middle schoolers, but the difference is they go to school at night and they go to a very special school for weirns. Next slide, please. There you see their gym class involves a lot more than just dodgeball, right? And they all have these magical powers. And of course, our main characters are kind of struggling with normal middle school problems on top of, you know, magical middle school problems. Next slide, please. And as you can see, there's something mysterious happening in their town. There's a schoolhouse with disappearing children, and they're trying to kind of solve this mystery, which gives this series a little bit more of a dark edge. Really good for the upcoming Halloween season, actually. I really like this book, this series. I think it's a lot of fun. It's different from Berrybrook, but I think if you have patrons or students who would like a little bit something meatier or more fantastical than the kind of slice of life of Berrybrook, this would be a great series for that. Next slide, please. And finally, I want to talk about Kyle's Little Sister, something not by Svetlana Chmakova. This book came out last year. It is a debut book by Bonhyung Jung. She is a Korean artist based in Korea, and this is an original work of hers, again, debut work. It was actually selected, it's a Junior Library Guild selection, very proud of that. And it tells the story of Grace, who is entering middle school with her older brother. And her older brother is perfect, the perfect child, in some ways very similar to Enemies. And she's really struggling with kind of being Kyle's little sister as she meets new people and they kind of all know who he is. And she feels like she's in his shadow. And there is a conflict within her friend group that she feels was started by Kyle. And she kind of has to deal with these miscommunications and these changing feelings as she and her friends and her brother all grow up and try to, you know, make the best of their middle school experience. Next slide, please. And as you can see, Bon has beautiful artwork. I love her colors and her use of expression is just really, really wonderful. Next slide, please. And there's Kyle. He's perfect. And poor Grace. She just, you know, she's not super social. He really is. She would rather just, you know, play video games by herself or with her friends. And he just wants to, you know, he's very outgoing. He's on a sports team, things like that. Next slide, please. And here are Grace's friends. They're all a lot of fun, very distinct characters. Amy loves K-pop and romance. Jay is kind of quiet and loves games. A really, really fun group of girls. Next slide, please. But again, something happens and Grace and her friends kind of have a falling out and she is convinced that it's all Kyle's fault. Next slide. What will happen? You got to read to find out. And I definitely recommend it. Kyle's Little Sister is a great book and a great debut. Next slide, please. That's it from us for today. Please feel free to check us out on social media. Once again, we do have digital review copies of many of our books, definitely have Enemies up right now on Edelweiss and on NetGalley. So please go ahead and request that. And otherwise, you know, please feel free to ask any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Morgana. Next, we will hear from Aaron Aladdin. Aaron is the associate editor at Pajama Press and the author of the 2021 nonfiction picture book, Outside You Notice. As a reader, she is convinced that the greatest excellence in literature is found in middle grade novels, and I agree. Take it away, Aaron.
Hello, thank you. I am saying a quick hello with my camera on and then turning it off because my rural internet is not always reliable. So thank you for taking some time with me today. Here at Pajama Press, we prioritize literary books that are highly relevant to young readers. Books that are at home in a trade bookstore, but that are especially well suited to use in libraries and public schools because of the timeliness of their themes and the quality of their physical production. I'm going to share 3 of them with you today, all for audiences aged 8 to 12 in this fall season. And I'll mention now that each of these books has a really robust discussion guide available as a free download on the Pajama Press website, and we have digital reading copies available by request on Edelweiss. First up, we have The Unique Lou Fox. This is a 240-page hardcover with a dust jacket, and it's a novel with a lot of heart. Author Jodi Carmichael brings to it her own experience with ADHD and a text disability, as well as her passion for celebrating the amazing creative powers that can come with having ADHD, both in her experience and that of her 5th grade protagonist, Lou. Lou loves big words, even though dyslexia makes spelling them a real pain, and she often thinks of words broken out into syllables, which is why the title has that unusual hyphen. Lou has bold, audacious plans to be both a Broadway playwright and a Cirque du Soleil performer. At recess, she practices gymnastics and writes and directs plays for her 2 best friends, but she dreads hearing the bell for class. Her teacher, Mrs. Snyder, doesn't know much about dyslexia or ADHD, and she's constantly calling Lou out for daydreaming. Lou thinks of her as the shadow phantom because she always seems to appear out of nowhere, and in her frustration, Lou wishes that Mrs. Snyder would just disappear. Meantime, big changes are brewing at home. Lou's mom announces that she's pregnant, and Lou wavers between excitement at being a big sister and anxiety that her parents are not going to have enough love to go around between an adorable baby and a 5th grader who keeps getting into scrapes. She even wishes sometimes that her mom wasn't pregnant at all. When Mrs. Snyder ends up dangerously ill and Lou's mom has a fall, Lou is terrified that her wishes have some dark power. And in all of this emotional turbulence, she ends up fighting with her friends and alienating the classmates who were supposed to act in her first real play. But at the heart of this story, and carrying Lou through it, are some beautifully grounding relationships. One is between Lou and her principal, who knows a thing or two about feeling out of place in the classroom, and another is between Lou and her parents, especially her emotionally intelligent father. And we even get to witness Mrs. Snyder taking steps to educate herself about teaching neurodiverse students, which is really valuable for young readers to see. We made some design choices in this book to make it more accessible to readers with dyslexia. The basic choice that most people know about is the font, and we used Helvetica and Open Dyslexia typefaces. But font choices alone don't help everyone, so we also avoided uneven spacing by using a left alignment. We avoided breaking words at the end of lines, and we reduced our use of italics wherever we could. That's why you'll see a lot of bold words for emphasis where you might be more used to seeing italics. Of course, the most flexible format for accessibility is an EPUB, and all of our novels have that format published simultaneously with the hardcover edition. Next, we're going to talk about Michelle Katarusman. She has been sweeping the middle grade scene with her profound and award-winning novels. She has a way of inviting readers into a character's story with such immediacy that it feels like the most natural thing in the world to explore the big social and environmental themes that are affecting that character's life. You may know Music for Tigers, in which a young girl with a passion for violin finds herself in Tasmania protecting animals that most people think are extinct. Or Girl of the Southern Sea, in which a talented young storyteller in Jakarta, Indonesia, uses her gifts to avoid an arranged marriage. Or The Theory of Hummingbirds, in which a 6th grader who was born with a twisted foot has to figure out what her life is going to look like after her final surgery to correct it. This slide lists just some of the awards and accolades for those past titles, but we're really here to talk about Michelle's newest book, Ronny. Ronny is a 224-page hardcover novel with a dust jacket. It was inspired by an incident that took place during the years when Michelle was living in her father's homeland of Indonesia. Her brother called one day to say that he'd encountered a caged orangutan at a restaurant that was so small and remote it didn't have a street address. This was before Google, so it was really difficult for Michelle to find a rescue organization and direct them to the restaurant, but she finally managed it. She and her brother learned later that the cage had to be cut open because the orangutan had outgrown the opening. They also learned that the restaurant owner was actually relieved that the orangutan had been rescued. He hadn't known that rescue and rehabilitation organizations existed. Those two details stayed with Michelle: the too small cage door, and the owner who didn't know that any better option existed for an orangutan whose habitat had been destroyed. And those two details became the kernel of truth around which the novel Barani was crafted. Now, this book hits you with every emotion. It has 3 points of view. First is wealthy Malia, who is so passionate about orangutan and rainforest conservation that she sets off a firestorm of controversy at her middle school over a petition related to palm oil. Her region depends economically on the palm oil industry, and her activism gets Malia, her best friend, and her teacher suspended from school. The second perspective belongs to Ari. He is a budding chess whiz and an excellent student, but his education depends on his relationship with his uncle, who's hosting him and paying his school fees. Ari is upset about the caged orangutan his uncle keeps at his restaurant. She's clearly seriously depressed, and Ari is desperate to help her, but he doesn't know how, and he's also afraid to jeopardize his own future. The final perspective is Ginger Juice, the orangutan. Michelle consulted with orangutan experts and spent time at an orangutan sanctuary to help her craft a unique voice for Ginger Juice. Her chapters use a simplified sentence structure, but they express truly profound ideas and emotions. Ginger Juice remembers her mother and the day their forest burned, and the days when she was small enough to live in the house like a human toddler. But now she's too big to get out of her cage, and she's increasingly overwhelmed with a feeling of numbness that she calls the haze. The voices in this story come together when Ari ends up with a copy of Malia's petition, which includes information about orangutan rehabilitation centers. Once he knows those exist, Ari can start to see a future for Ginger Juice, as long as he's willing to risk his own. The book opens with a map of Indonesia with an inset for the island of Java where the action takes place. The back matter is really robust. It includes a glossary of Indonesian words, information about orangutans and how we can help them, a nuanced perspective on the issue of palm oil, and an author's note in which Michelle tells a fuller version of the orangutan rescue story I shared with you. Finally, today we have If You Can Dream It, You Can Do It. Now, if you're here at this middle grade webinar, I suspect there's a chance you're familiar with the online middle grade community MG Book Village. One of its founders, Kathy McIsaac, teamed up with Colleen Nelson, who you may know from her previous middle grade novels, The Undercover Booklist and The Harvey Stories, to write this book. Together, these two interviewed dozens of people doing careers of all kinds and created If You Can Dream It, You Can Do It, how 25 inspiring individuals found their dream jobs. This is our lead middle grade nonfiction book for the season. It's 64 pages, hardcover with a laminated cover, and it's full color throughout, including both photographs and illustrations by the fabulously funny Scott Ritchie. The text is structured around profiles of 25 people doing careers that range from human rights lawyer to farmer to smoke jumper. About a third of the people profiled in the book are American, another third are from Canada, and the rest are international. Now, Colleen is a middle school teacher, and Kathy manages a children's library department, so they are both well aware of the gaps in nonfiction career books that are currently available for this age group. They set out to create something that would catch readers' curiosity and show them career paths that they may not know about. They also wanted to affirm and validate all sorts of skill sets and education options. The book has quite broad representation of individuals who are Indigenous or people of color, some of them first and second generation immigrants. There's an interior designer who is deaf, a vision-impaired animal and conservation interpreter, a barber who's trans, and several women in male-dominated fields like NHL scouting and professional video game playing. I've included a number of profiles in the slides, and I'll highlight some of the recurring sidebars as we go through them. First, the inspiring individual spotlight you see there features young people who are already exploring a path that might lead to a career. And we wanted to expose kids to careers they don't know about, so the spin-off jobs sidebar lists other fields that involve similar skill sets or interests. For example, someone with similar interests to an ornithologist might become an avian veterinarian, a wildlife rehabilitator, or a birdwatching guide. We're very conscious that there's a lot of anxiety among young people about the pressure they're under to identify their career early on, so the pro tips and why not try sidebars suggest ways they can dip their toes into different areas as kids without committing to anything. And the why not try sidebars suggest ways to practice building skills. The book includes a table of contents, a reference guide to the different types of education mentioned, including apprenticeships, self-directed learning, and various degrees, as well as this forecast of emerging fields for future careers. We have information about hard and soft skills, a glossary, and an index. Pajama Press titles are distributed by Ingram Publisher Services in the US and internationally, and by UTP Distribution in Canada. You can find us being promoted by Myrick Marketing and Media, both online and in their Publisher Spotlight booth at library conferences. I shared email addresses on the screen if you'd like to get in touch with me about anything editorial, or with Quinn Baker about marketing matters. Thank you again for your time. It's been a pleasure to share our books with you.
Thank you so much, Erin. Finally, we will hear from June Lee. June is the assistant editor at Annick Press, where she works with the editorial and production teams and finds new creators for Annick's List. Her particular editorial interests are in themes of immigration, complex relationships, and resilience, focusing on stories that empower readers and validate their experiences. Thank you for being here, June.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. I'm going to copy Erin and turn on my camera just for a second just to say hi, but I'm going to turn it off for the presentation because my internet is not always reliable. But my name is June Lee, and I'm the assistant editor here at Annick Press. So for those of you that don't know, we are an independent kids publisher based in Toronto, Ontario. We publish books for kids of all ages, from board books, picture books, middle grade, graphic novels, nonfiction, and books for young adults as well. So Annick was founded in 1975 on the principle that kids of all identities should see themselves reflected in books. And one of our still most popular books, The Paperback Princess by Robert Munsch, remains a favorite due to its fearless and unapologetic way of challenging conventional notions of identity and conformity and encouraging readers to define who they are on their own terms. I'm really excited to chat with you today because middle grade is really one of my favorite age groups within kids' books. And so I'm really thrilled to be here to tell you about some of our fantastic recently released and upcoming middle grade titles. So I'll get us started by talking about a series I wish I had read as a kid, which is the Nguyen Kids series by author Linda Trin and illustrator Clayton Nguyen. So this is actually an early chapter book series, and this represents a new direction of early chapter books that we're really keen to navigate towards here at Annick. This new series tells the perspective of three siblings, Anne, Liz, and Jacob, and how they each navigate themes of racism, gender stereotypes, microaggressions, and identity, all with a supernatural twist. This charming, heartfelt, and magical series will start with the first two books, which are Anne and Liz's stories, being released in October of this year, which is next month, of course, if you can believe it. In each book, the siblings discover the unique power of an object gifted to them by their beloved Grandma Noy. And although Grandma has already passed away by the beginning of book one, the siblings each find a way to connect with her, their ancestors, and this helps them discover new aspects of their identities as well. I personally connected so much to the series from the very beginning, especially with how it explores this idea of identity and home, not being about where you are or the location. It's really about your connections to your culture and family. In book one, The Secret of the Jade Bangle, stars the eldest sibling, Anne, and how she finds the strength and courage to stand up for herself as she endures racism in her ballet class. The seemingly simple but harmful question, "Where are you from?" causes Anne to feel isolated and increasingly confused about her identity and connections to her Vietnamese and Canadian cultures. But Anne begins to find courage and learn new aspects of her identity as she learns how to cook Vietnamese food from her beloved grandmother's spirit. Liz, the middle sibling, is featured in book 2, The Power of the Pearl Earrings, who finds inspiration from the mythical Trunk sisters in order to discover her own power against a popular boy at school, Michael, who continues to humiliate her and say all the things she can't do because she is a girl. Little does Michael know, however, that he has messed with the wrong kid. Liz is not only fiercely determined to prove him wrong, she also has the power of her ancestral warriors on her side. Taekwondo and computer coding also take part in this energetic, powerful story. The third book in the series, The Mystery of the Painted Fan, is set to be released on April 11, 2023, and centers on the youngest sibling, Jacob. Readers will love seeing how the siblings grow and change throughout the series, and this one is no exception. Jacob, the youngest, is tired of being the baby of the family. He loves hockey, but is excited to explore new aspects of his identity. But to his surprise and disappointment, not everyone seems as excited for change as he is. This third book explores poignant themes of gender identity and expression, and continues the series' unique blend of social emotional themes, the supernatural, family, and cultural connections. You'll be excited to know that the sibling stories will not end with Jacob's book. Book number 4 is scheduled for release in fall of 2023 and will feature all of the siblings on their adventures in Vietnam. So as you can see from these sample spreads, the series celebrates Vietnamese culture and the importance of familial connection, and the engaging writing also incorporates strong social emotional learning connections. A video of the fantastic author Linda Trin is also available on our YouTube channel, where she shares her inspirations in writing this series. So now to shift our attention to some of our great recent releases, I'll get us started with the beautiful novel by Sandra Laurent, She Holds Up the Stars. This book features Misko, a 12-year-old Anishinaabe girl who goes to live with her grandmother on the reservation. Misko hasn't been back to the reservation for 8 years, and it's not all excitement that fills her as she returns. But something seems to draw her towards the place, and when she arrives, Misko becomes increasingly drawn to nature, the earth, and her own family's history. Misko finds a particular connection to a horse, Mishtidim, who lives on a neighboring farm. Misko and a young boy on the farm challenge each other, but eventually form a wary bond as they work together to save Mishtidim. And Misko learns more about herself, her family, and her family history than she might have ever imagined. Sandra is an arts leader, creator, innovator, and founder and director of Red Sky Performance, which is Canada's leading company of contemporary Indigenous performance. This beautiful and deeply poignant novel is a must-read. Another amazing Indigenous title on our list is Skywolf's Call by the authors of the acclaimed and award-winning Turtle Island and What the Eagle Sees, Dr. Eldon Yellowhorn and Kathy Lillinger. This book draws on the wisdom of elders, stories, and present-day knowledge keepers to show Indigenous knowledge in action, and covers aspects of life from medicine, architecture, and astronomy to ecology and the climate. And we'll continue our theme of nonfiction titles with More Than Money, a title by Hadley Dyer and Mitchell Bernard, with illustrations from Paul Gill. This nonfiction title explores the complex and increasingly relevant topic of economic inequality in an accessible and engaging manner for young readers. I think we can all agree that this is a topic that will only become more relevant as time goes by, and readers will be intrigued to see how much economic inequality is central to so many aspects of societal issues. However, this book also gives information on what readers can do to combat these problems, providing practical and informative solutions alongside the presented information. And if you're looking for another title on a similar topic, please be sure to check out our backlist title, Follow Your Stuff by Kevin Sylvester and Michael Flinka, which breaks down the basics of global economics and consumer decisions for young readers. So we'll now take a step back into space with this next title, Searching Beyond the Stars by Nicole Martellaro and illustrated by Amanda Key. This is an excellent title for your STEM list, profiling 7 remarkable women scientists with an intersectional view and their achievements in their respective fields. The unique aspect to this title is that the profiles highlight the incredible odds each scientist face while chasing new discoveries and the ways in which sexism and racism, among other barriers, still affect women scientists to this day. This book is sure to inspire readers and the next generation of space scientists. The author, Nicole Martellaro, is also an amateur astronomer, a science reporter with CBC News, and the editor of the Journal of the Astronomical Society of Canada. And of course, I couldn't leave you without showing off a few of our backlist titles, including 2 graphic novels, Rabbit Chase and Living with Viola, and the nonfiction title Chasing Bats and Tracking Rats. We have enjoyed great reception, reviews, and awards with these titles, so please check these out for sure if you haven't already. But before I go, I wanted to give a sneak preview of another early chapter book series that's coming out in 2023. I'm thrilled to share that Salma of the acclaimed picture book Salma the Syrian Chef by Danny Ramadan and Anna Braun returns in an early chapter book format for slightly older readers. Lovers of the picture book can grow with Salma and join her on her new adventures. This first book in the 3-book series, Salma Makes a Home, is a deeply emotional and touching book that explores themes of family and the meaning of home. After almost 2 years apart, Salma's Baba is finally joining their family in Canada. She's so excited, but she immediately starts to worry. What if Baba doesn't like their new home in Canada? Salma also realizes she started to forget about her home in Syria. Can Salma make space in her heart for 2 homes? Perhaps, maybe more worrying, can Baba? I can definitely tell you that I had a few tears while reading this book. The same emotional resonance that we loved in Salma and the Syrian Chef is back in a way that will hit slightly differently this time, but Salma is just as lovable, and the ways in which she always thinks and worries about the people that she loves will definitely bring a few tears to your eyes as well. And I know readers will be so excited to delve into this next adventure with a charming and engaging Salma. Author Danny Ramadan continues to be a star on the rise, with an award-winning adult novel and a memoir on the way from PRHC. Illustrator Anna Braun adds her expressive style full of emotion, and we think they make a really fantastic team, and we're so excited for her to reunite with Salma again next year. So thank you so much for letting me chat with you today. I had so much fun talking about our titles. Please be sure to check out our social media profiles and our educator resource guides on our website. We also have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel as well, featuring our authors. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, June. And another big thank you to all of today's wonderful presenters. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Now you can share Booklist love with everyone connected to your school district, library system, or higher learning institution. Booklist Online Unlimited offers just that. Unlimited simultaneous access to 30 years worth of review and article archives, plus digital editions of Booklist, book links, Booklist's guide to graphic novels in libraries, and Booklist Reader. For pricing and other questions, visit booklistonline.com/subscribe. Good news! You can now deliver Booklist's unparalleled recommendations directly to patrons. Share Booklist Reader digitally and now in print. Learn more at bit.ly/booklistreaderprint, or check out our website for more information about ordering your copies now. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our panelists and to our sponsors, Shadow Mountain Publishing, Yen Press, Pajama Press, and Annick Press. This concludes today's webinar.